Hey family, welcome to How Love Works, where we talk about the principles for lasting love. Are you ready for love? This was an exciting program. I got 3 takeaways from the program that I watched. Yesterday it was really interesting. I wrote them down again. A lot of these takeaways are pretty common, really common. You see it all the time. But I was really intrigued by a lot of the conversations that I saw, especially when they went up to the mountains and they all got a chance to sit down and communicate with one another and go back and forth with what they really were experiencing. But the takeaways that I got from that conversation, or their lack of the conversations, was I saw that there was these 3 metrics of vulnerability versus weakness, clarity versus consensus, and the weakness of men and women. Vulnerability versus weakness, and clarity versus consensus, and the weakness of men and the women that were there. Let me go through these 3 real quick. Okay, vulnerability versus weakness. What I saw, there was an issue with not only Tandy, but the one that was really doing most of the talking was Ashima, because she was really concerned about her position. And with Darren, she was on the balcony. I know if you guys watched the program, she was on the balcony, and she was talking to Alexis, and she was really upset about the lack, in her mind, the lack of transparency that was occurring between her, Tandy, and Darren. She really wanted Darren to be a little bit more transparent with her, but more importantly, I like the way Darren handled the situation, because if you watch the program, Darren learned something that I think most men have not learned how to do. And he learned it from watching how his mother was reacting to how his father was quite the womanizer. And he concluded as a young child, or a young man, I suppose, that this was not the kind of behavior that he was going to apply in his life going forward. He decided that he was going to be vulnerable, meaning that he was going to have an identity, a real identity, which consisted of his boundaries, his expectations, and what his true values were. He had a fully orbed integrity from the standpoint that he was going to be very transparent and clear with any woman he was in a relationship with, which was contrary to the type of way his father was, who had an agenda where his whole agenda was just totally self-centered, and he was involved in just being driven purely by pleasure, which was a totally useless lifestyle. And obviously, I can just imagine what ultimately happened to his father. But I know when he had an opportunity, Darren, he had an opportunity to talk, he found out that really what the situation was is that she was hurt. Her feelings were hurt. And often that's really the situation with most people. But she didn't really know how to just convey the fact that her feelings were hurt, because that would require her to be vulnerable. And she conflated vulnerability with weakness. And she even said it. She said being vulnerable, she has been hurt before. She thinks that telling people what her boundaries, her expectations, and her true values are, she thinks that that is a weakness. Really what that is, that's true power. And that's the takeaway. She didn't learn that. She got an opportunity to experience it with the man who was willing to be vulnerable. He had expectations, he had values, and he has boundaries, and he expressed those boundaries like a man. unlike the other two brothers, and specifically London, London is still dealing with his confusion about which woman he wants to be with, whether it is he's going to be with Divine, the woman that he has spent a large amount of time with, or is it going to be with the 33-year-old? And I think that based upon the way he has been behaving, it's my view that that's the person he really wants to spend his time with. I don't really think Divine is someone he really wants to be with. I think he is attracted to her sexually, Divine. But I think he believes that he has a true connection with Alexis. And I also would agree that Alexis has that same connection with him, but she's frustrated that he is not being more masculine and pursuing her and being direct with her. He's not being vulnerable. See, and this takes me to the area of clarity. See, she's interested in clarity. That's what all the women are interested in. They're seeking clarity, not consensus, not cooperation. They're not looking for the men to cooperate necessarily. They may not necessarily want to entertain the feelings that will come from being rejected, if you will. That's a real harsh word here, but being rejected rather than being received by one of the men. But they went in with their eyes wide open. They understand the situation. This is pretty much a competitive environment that all the women are trying to build a certain level of connectiveness with each individual man, and they want to build a certain level of intimacy. And that, I see, is what's going on with London, Alexis, and not so much Divine. Now, I see when I looked at the following program that's coming up next week that Alexis, though she seems to be a little frustrated with London, I think she really has a thing for London. Because when Brent was talking to her, that's the guy with the gray like me and the black and the gray hair, he made it known, because he seems to be very vulnerable now and direct about his expectations. He's told Alexis that he sees himself as a second. He's not the primary, but he was clear. He went directly to, I got to give him his props, he went directly to Divine, told Divine that he was going to pursue Alexis and he was not going to lead her on, and she was very good with that. I'm not saying she liked it, but she handled it in a very mature manner. Now, Reva, that'd have been a good one, right? Reva seems to be the one that is not really dealing with this situation very well, because she actually got into a disagreement with Tandy about her relationship between her and Tandy. She believes that she is an associate. Tandy considers her a friend. I didn't think that was appropriate necessarily for her to bust the girl's bubble necessarily, just because she didn't think of Tandy as a friend. I didn't think it was necessary to give that information. I didn't see where it benefited. I didn't see the cost benefit in it. I kind of just said, well, what's the big deal? She saw you as a friend. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to see her as a friend. I guess she has an axe to grind, I guess. I'm not sure. But I think that if I was going to take an educated guess, I think Reva might be gone probably next week anyways. I thought it was going to be Ashima, but I'm guessing it might be Reva, or it might even be Divine. Divine might drop out on her own. I don't know, because she was pretty upset with the fact that she was looking at London And London was really upset that Alexis was walking away with Brent. But looking at that confrontation between Brent and London and not hearing her say anything or to interject, she really is not sincere about her frustrations. She wants him to be more direct, but instead of being vulnerable and just telling him that's what she needs from him, she needs him to be more vulnerable. She's not doing that. She's just complaining. And see, this comes down to the last point, which is weak men and weak women. See, oftentimes men, we make ourselves weak by what we do or what we don't do. Women make themselves weak by what they say. So I would always tell a woman, stop saying things that make you weak. And sometimes the things they do also makes them weak, or makes the relationship that they're trying to cultivate, they make it weaker. And it causes more complexity in the relationship. And when you add more complexity to a relationship, it will overwhelm the relationship. And that's what's actually happening when you watch these individuals. So I'm going to close right now. I'm just saying that what you need to understand, vulnerability is really a power. It's really a perspective. It's really about having a clear identity of who you are. It's your true identity that you are content with. It's an identity that you're willing to disclose your weaknesses, if you will. You're willing to disclose who you are, where you're headed in life, what's your goals, your identity, your values, your expectations and boundaries. Whereas being weak, as women see it, being weak is the opposite. It's like it's not disclosing any of that. It's hiding your true feeling. It's hiding your true identity. It's hiding what you truly want. It's doing the total opposite. And that's really what you're noticing with these women. But you're also seeing some other areas that kind of castrating the relationships. You're seeing things where a lot of things are being withheld. You can see a lot of things like, some of the women are interrupting the men, and some of them are rolling their eyes. At least the younger one is. I say Alexis is. She's impatient. She's expecting him to act the way she would act, and these are the kinds of foolishness that you see. She's creating more problems. She's kind of using one man against another man to try to get what she wants. That's a little manipulative. She's not really showing him or telling him that she needs him to step up as a man, and telling him what he needs, and then asking him, what is it that she can do to get what she needs. And that doesn't necessarily mean she's going to do it, but that's one of the ways of dealing with the situation. Well, that's what I noticed, ladies and gentlemen. I noticed that that's the kind of situation that's going on all the time in these situations where men and women are trying to make decisions. I'm sorry to see the indecisiveness of London. I'm beginning to see that Mario is making a decision. He's focusing almost 100% on Tandy right now. And Reva's, I think, pretty much eliminated herself, because she is like, if you're not going to come, all the way, but she's not being as vulnerable as she needs to be. And I would even go so far as saying the same thing with Alexis. She thinks she is, but she's not. She's not. But we'll see how things turn out in the next episode. That's my time. I thank you for yours. Catch you on the other side. God bless you.